Hi, and thank you for joining us here at Synergy HomeCare for our January webinar. We are really excited for today's topic, care for everyone, and how home care serves more than just the senior population. Synergy HomeCare has always, from its inception, has always been focused on serving all ages and needs, and not solely focused on the elder population, because we've always recognized that the needs across the life cycle really focus on many of the things that our caregivers are providing for our elder population, with some adjustments to the way that we do our care planning, the way that we're doing our training. But again, the focus has always been on recognizing that home care is such a wonderful service within the community that all ages, all needs should really be able to benefit from those type of services. I've always really enjoyed this saying that Rosalind Carter, our former First Lady, shared, and I think it's important for all of us to be able to recognize really how in-depth the caregiver role is. And while Synergy HomeCare and other home care organizations really provide that professional level of care, there are so many out there that we want to recognize as family caregivers that I think it's really key that there really are four kinds of people in this world: those who have been caregivers, those who currently are caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need care. And I hope that at the end of this webinar that we have really addressed the needs of all four of these individuals, made up from one person, depending on the point of time that we are reaching you. I think this slide says it all, that there is such a diversity of age and abilities in our communities, and that, again, while so many of the service tasks that caregivers are providing, there needs to be a recognition of the unique nature of that individual and how that particular diagnosis, situation, is impacting them in that moment in time, and how our caregivers can be working with not only that individual, but those who surround them and support them and help their caregiving to really enhance the situation for all. I want to outline what this seminar is really going to be touching upon. The first is looking at some statistics around the care by the numbers and talk about, again, who is our client, who is needing services out in the community, and for what reasons. We're going to do an overview of what home care services are and how it fits within the continuum of other care providers, what one's goals for home care are, should be, can be. We're going to look at that idea of care for everyone, and then the considerations of care for each one of those populations that we're servicing. We're going to address the services that are available in home care. Again, some of these are utilized for some clients and not others, and all of them are utilized for some. When to look to home care. When do we begin to recognize that this is a service that may be able to enhance our daily lives and support the needs that we have? And then those questions that you can ask a home care provider to ensure that it is the right fit for the family, for the client. And then the resources that are available out on the website in your local communities, as well as, again, the services that are there for education. Many of you who have listened to other ones of my webinars are very familiar with this slide, and I think it is particularly impactful for when we're talking about care delivery of services. the reality in our lives, particularly when our lives are impacted by age or illness along our life cycle, that there are things that we can control, things that we can influence, and things we cannot control. My hope at the end of this webinar is that you have a greater sense of those things that you can influence as both a family member or as someone who is receiving care, and those things, again, that you can control in your life, despite the fact that when you are needing care, it feels as if there's so many aspects of life that you cannot control. Our hope is that knowing the resources that are available to you and how to access those will give you a better sense of mastery over your own independence. So I want to share a little bit about care by the numbers. And what was really unique as I was researching this is really how difficult it is to find some of those numbers unless you are specifically searching for elder care around home care. And I think it really speaks to that for so long, home care organizations have not always recognized the life cycle needs of clients. And why I think that as Synergy HomeCare has from day one seen how important these services are to those living with areas of need for a variety of reasons, what it can do in their daily life. So again, this was really interesting to look at, and some of the numbers for certain groups, particularly those before age 5, and even those within the age 5 to 17, are really difficult to find anybody who has collected this data. So how common are specific disabilities by age, and really looking at where are the difficulties reached? And when we think about some of the sensory deficits, things like hearing and vision, there's certainly so when we think about sensory difficulties, hearing loss, vision loss, it's one of the areas where there is more of a collection of data, and we can see the areas of need and the population that is requiring services, non-institutionalized services out in the community. We see that ambulatory difficulties certainly is an arena that requires more assistance and has a breakdown from really across the life cycle. Cognitive difficulties, this was a interesting slide and maybe a surprise for some of you, but really the way that they are identifying this, and we typically, particularly when we're working with elders, think about cognitive difficulties in relation to those type of diseases that fall under the Alzheimer's umbrella. But again, cognitive difficulties in the younger population may be a result of a traumatic brain injury, may be a result of they're recognizing from a learning disability, from the autism spectrum. So again, that cognitive difficulty, there is a range of the population that can really benefit from the assistance of services. Those who have issues and difficulty with independent living, again, they don't collect data for those within that 5 to 17 range because they are anticipating that family members are housing those individuals. However, that does not mean that their day-to-day living needs cannot and should not be supported by outside assistance. And again, those with a self-care difficulty really, again, spreads across the life cycle and for different reasons, again. Disability rates by age, and this is going to be based on some of the terminology for what disability is. But there is a 51% of those aged 18 to 64 have identified with some type of disability that would be identified under the Social Security or requiring some type of need. 41% age 65 and older, and age 5 to 17, 7.2%, and under 5 years, 0.4. 73 million Americans will be age 65 plus by 2030. And again, because the 65 and over population is no longer really seen as just one single cohort, because again, when you've met somebody who's 65, some of their needs really are more related to someone who's in their late 80s, but many are living life more like those in their 40 to 50 age range. 70% of the US population can expect at some point in their life to use long-term care services, but 80% of older adults want to age in place. And I think that number will continue to climb because of the population and the baby boomers, and certainly those next age cohorts that are much more used to that independent lifestyle that they will not want to give up in their home settings. So let's talk a little bit about home care itself. Home care as a service really allows individuals to live their lives to their fullest potential by enhancing their day-to-day lives on those good days and supporting them with care on those tough days. Because the reality for many living with a variety of diagnoses, that it's not every day that their needs are bringing them to the level of service that requires assistance across all activities of daily living. But what can happen is, because there may be intermittent physical needs, that same care support, that same care team is really helping them on those days where they feel good, where they have the energy to really be out and doing those things that bring them pleasure and joy. That the caregiver can still be a part of enhancing their life, and home care does not have to just be seen as something that is supporting physical needs, but really is also something that can increase someone's capability of living that independent life. Home care is person-centered because, again, we are coming to your home wherever home is defined. That may be a freestanding home, that may be in an independent living facility or apartment. So home is really based on your definition. It's person-centered because, again, each plan of care that is put in place, each schedule, each group of caregivers that are incorporated into your team is unique to your specific needs and goals. And as we talk about that, home care is goal-oriented. And it's really focused on what your goal as a client is, what the goal is for the family and for your other support members, as much as it is about needs. And during an initial care assessment, where a team is going to come out and have some conversation with you to talk about who the agency is, who the providers are, it really needs to focus around what are your goals and how can we work together to reach those. Home care is comprehensive because when you're in your home setting, there is more than just the physical need or task that needs to be considered. It is looking at your environment within that home. Things that we can do to enhance that home environment to allow for not only a safer living arrangement, to minimize and reduce risk of falls or injury, but also how can we really enhance that space? How can you then begin to use parts of the home that maybe before you weren't able to access because it wasn't safe to do it alone? Looking at the social environment, the things that you want to do out in the community that maybe you've been limited by because of transportation concerns, fear of going out on your own. So really, home care is comprehensive to not just look at the physical needs of an individual or their cognitive needs, but also look around the community as to what other things are you wanting to incorporate into your day-to-day. And of course, looking at those physical, emotional, and cognitive needs as well. But what home care is not. Home care is not a one-size-fits-all. Because again, we can have two individuals, both with the same diagnosis, for example, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, but the services that are coming in, the goals that they and their family members have, are unique to who that person is and what that person's goals are for the future, both short-term and long-term. And so the plan of care, the type of caregivers coming in, both their skill sets, their kind of personalities, are all going to be unique to that one individual. And we absolutely see that and recognize that, for instance, when you think about somebody who has had a stroke in their 70s or 80s versus someone who's had a stroke in their 40s or 50s. Because again, what they were doing and what has been impacted day to day is so unique. What they're hoping to get back to is so unique to that person that the task and the goals for the care plan are going to be as unique as well. The goals of home care, as we shared on the former slide, is really, again, to meet the needs and the goals of the client, their family, their support team, the other healthcare providers that may be involved, any other service providers that are part of the team as well. The goal is to also increase one's safety and security and decrease concerns for falls, injury in the home, having time where someone is not there who could be the eyes and ears for symptoms that may come up and need immediate assistance. Home care is really about enhancing social engagement and independence in the home and community. Whether that is getting out and back to your weekly lunch appointment, a golf game, a card game, or getting to be able to attend school outside of where your home base is, now with the assistance of a caregiver who is coming on campus with you, home care can be part of that solution. Home care assists with activities of daily living. And anybody who has been touched by the health continuum is going to have probably heard this terminology. But what activities of daily living really refers to is those activities of bathing and grooming, dressing and undressing, meal preparation and assistance with feeding, transferring from one place to another, from a chair to standing, from standing to a bed, safe restroom use and maintaining continence, ambulation, whether that's continuing to be able to walk safely, utilize your walker, manage with your wheelchair, and memory care and stimulation for those who are dealing with Alzheimer's, dementia, or other cognitive and memory impairing diagnoses. Home care is there to ease the burden of independent activities of daily living. And independent activities of daily living are important because it's what really allows people to live more independently, even if they are not necessarily required activities on a daily basis, like those activities of daily living are. Instrumental activities are more subtle than ADLs. and they can help determine with greater detail the level of assistance required by someone who is in need. These include basic communication skills, such as using a phone, a mobile phone, email, internet. Transportation, either by driving oneself, arranging rides, the ability to use public transportation. Meal prep, all of those steps that go into meal planning, preparation, safe storage, and the ability to safely use kitchen equipment. Shopping, the ability to make appropriate food and clothing purchase decisions. Housework, the laundry, the cleaning of dishes, the maintaining a hygienic place of residence to really be able to then live the life that you're wanting to live despite the diagnosis or the age impact. Managing medications, which is a really key one, and what we often see as a reason that people have had some health crises, which is taking accurate dosages at the appropriate time, managing getting those prescriptions from the pharmacy, and avoiding conflicts. And managing personal finances, operating within a budget, writing checks, paying bills, being able to go through the mail and know what is needed and necessary and what can be tossed and what could be a scam. Care for everyone. So we began talking about this at the beginning, but this is really the crux of what this conversation is all about. There are so many different categories that the clients that we work with fit within, and what may be the reason that they initiated care to begin with. Certainly, we think about the memory and the cognitive when it relates to those with Alzheimer's and dementia. But again, as I shared, there are so many who have cognitive delays or declines because of other diagnoses or the usage of other medication, which may be more permanent or temporary, depending on the need for those meds. Traumatic brain injury, which can happen from a variety of reasons, accidents among those. Workers' comp, we're seeing that there are many individuals who, because of an injury at their workplace, are requiring the need of services, whether for a short or long period of time. Surgery recovery. And this can span for those surgeries that are more disease or age related, hip fractures, knee replacements, stroke, heart attacks, but also thinking about some of those surgeries that we choose to have, which can range from plastic surgery, some back surgeries or pain management techniques that are being utilized, even dental care, which can create, again, for a short period of time because of medications and pain and difficulty with eating, the need for services. Respite care is something that we see across the board, which is really where a family has a system in place to meet the needs of the individual they're providing care for. But for some reason, whether a hospitalization or an illness by the primary caregiver, a trip or a special event that part of that care team is needing to travel to, they're needing to put in place some services. And this is often the time when individuals recognize that incorporating professional team members into that care team can really benefit them and proactively reduce the risk for caregiver burnout. Travel and special events. There are many individuals who have all of their cognitive capabilities to participate and enjoy these travel and special events. However, because of their physical concerns, because of need for oxygen and managing that, and the kind of all the steps that happen on a trip, particularly if you're utilizing the airplane, that services can step in during this time frame to ensure that you're able to enjoy the part of that travel or special event that is most key, and not risk or be concerned about somebody else having to help you with some of those cares. Backup care is something we see for many working adults who are managing well until they have to go out of town for a travel for work or for a big presentation. And often children get sick or need to stay home from school during vacation, or parents come in place and they also need some assistance. And this is a time when caregivers can come in to provide that backup. Disease-specific care is absolutely a key component to the type of services that we see across the board. And it is unique because there are so many unique aspects for some of these diagnoses. For instance, Parkinson's disease, which is a neurodegenerative brain disorder that progresses slowly in most people. Symptoms can take years to develop, and people live for years with the disease while requiring increasing levels of care for day-to-day activities. Each person and family living with Parkinson's disease is unique, from moderate assistance to full-time care. The care team recognizes that each plan of care needs to be tailored to meet those particular goals and needs, and that there's an understanding that to preserve the quality of life for someone living with something such as Parkinson's, that the home care team needs to be focused on several areas that are unique to someone living with Parkinson's. Ensuring that meals are well planned, ensuring the right nutrition, working with the physical, occupational, and speech therapy team is a necessary part. Recognizing the key importance of the timing of reminders and assistance to get the medications to that individual is so important. And recognizing even those simple things when freezing occurs as to how to help that person get back into that ambulatory stance. And those are unique to Parkinson's itself, and why it's important that care teams recognize how unique these diagnoses are to the type of care we're putting in place. End of life care, working with that hospice team, understanding the dance that occurs when more than one team is in place, recognizing which team member is doing what, and also understanding the unique emotional issues that are occurring for both the client who is facing that advanced illness as well as their family member, understanding the changes in appetite, the increased pain or symptom management that's necessary. And those, again, are all unique aspects of the care team in how they're providing their services. Post-hospitalization care, stroke recovery, which again has very unique components in terms of the concerns for the food someone is eating based on swallowing difficulties, the way that their communication and verbalization, training and retraining is going. Cancer recovery, recognizing and needing to understand some of the unique nature of the treatments that individuals are receiving and some of the side effects from those, including the way that food changes its taste and the importance of needing to understand what food is best during that recovery, as well as the increased need for transportation to so many variety of appointments and the energy depletion that can occur during that time. We're seeing more and more clients with behavioral issues or those who are dealing with diagnoses and symptoms based on the autism spectrum, and knowing how as a care provider to be working both with that client, the school system often, as well as family members. Those who are dealing with rehabilitation after some type of injury, accident, or surgery, and how to work together with the physical therapist, the occupational therapist, to enhance that client's ability to continue maintaining the exercise plan that has been put in place. We see a lot across maternal health and pre- and postnatal care for those individuals who have been very independent, but because of risk for their pregnancy need to be on bed rest, and how care teams can come in and assist not only that client, but other children that may be in the home. Independence care services, again, we are seeing more and more young individuals who may have chronic or progressive illnesses, but who want to maintain their independence, living alone outside of their family members, continuing to go to school or to be able to work, and how we can meet those needs. For people with a disability, non-medical home care can be an important part of independent living, for example. Disability assistance can come in the form of in-home care supportive services, like helping with those errands, utilizing energy in the best places, transportation, assistance with some of those personal cares, even if the client themselves can guide the process, but needs that extra set of hands to be able to do the task that is set out. The right care at the right time in the right place. While there are universal components that every caregiver understands when working with any one of their clients, home care needs to recognize that when you have cared for one person with any one disease, disability, or age-related condition, that you have cared for one person. Because again, how a disease, a disability, or an age-related condition shows itself in one client's life is unique for that individual. Caring for a 45-year-old client, as I shared earlier, after a stroke is different than providing that same type of service for a 70-year-old stroke survivor. And every home care team needs to understand these unique but subtle differences. As I shared, we have had the privilege of providing care to young individuals living with both neuromuscular disease or cystic fibrosis or cerebral palsy, who wanted to be able to be independent of their parents' care and really be able to go back out into the college setting, the work setting, and while they know that they need the assistance of a care provider, to be able to have someone who is closer to their age, providing that care, kind of blending into the background, and really feeling like they can be in a similar situation as their peers with that extra level of support and service. What are some of the reasons to look to home care? A new diagnosis, even if it is not one that is going to have long-standing impact in terms of the symptoms for you to be able to provide care for yourself, oftentimes having a new diagnosis is so impactful from an emotional level. There's so much new information to be learning and implementing into one's day-to-day life that having the support of a care team with them during that time is really beneficial. A changing condition where someone has been able to maintain that level of control over what's happening, but because of something that has changed or new treatment that is coming in, needing that support. Oftentimes, the change in a primary caregiver's health also puts the requirement for care to come out. And sometimes it is the burnout of a family caregiver that we want to support or to try to keep at bay, and adding a level and a layer of personal care services from a professional side can really protect against that. Sometimes just the fact that someone needs increasing level of support and assistance with more personal and intimate cares such as bathing or restroom assistance is when they are no longer as comfortable with a family member providing that level of care and being able to incorporate a care team into their life to be able to do some of those tasks and allow family members to still provide that emotional level of care and some community support, but not around the personal care themselves. Work requirements of a family caregiver who needs to go out of town, who has a big presentation, who can't be working from home for a period of time, is one of the reasons that home care can come in. A desire to remain at home as part of your goal, and knowing that to do so, you do need to add in the support of others. I think this one is something that we don't think about enough, but I think it's really key, which is saving energy for the most important tasks. Sometimes there are things that are happening on a day-to-day basis that really is not where we get our enjoyment or quality of life, but they're necessary. It's necessary to do those grocery shopping and errands. It's necessary to make good meals that are nutritious. It's necessary to go down into another level of the home to do laundry and to be able to do some cleaning in the home. And those type of tasks take so much out of our energy level, or we're physically incapable of doing them, that bringing in somebody else to assist us allows us to keep doing the things we are able to do. A concern of isolation, which particularly can happen when transportation options are reduced based on someone's need to no longer drive because of physical or cognitive changes, and no longer being able to get out on a whim to different activities and events. Temporary rehab period, and we see this for all ages, whether it's a shoulder surgery or wrist surgery, or even knee replacement, and needing some assistance for a short period of time during the rehab period. Environmental safety concerns. This may be where a home is set up in such a way that there is multi-levels, and to be able to really access all aspects of the home, you need to have somebody there for standby assistance and guidance. Decrease in those instrumental activities of daily living, some of those kind of things that we don't even think about how necessary they are to complete because we're so focused on the physical tasks themselves, but being able to maintain within a home setting kind of the day-to-day is key. And so having somebody who's supporting you. Enhancing social stimulation, and this is particularly key for those who are recovering from a stroke or from a traumatic brain injury, but those who are living with cognitive or memory concerns, having somebody who is really geared into providing the type of social stimulation in the home that is both rehabilitative and enjoyable is a key function. And really thinking about proactive planning. The sooner we bring in services, the less we need to begin with often, and the longer we can stay in the home to avoid crisis type of service connections, which often have limited the type of services we're able to access. Starting the conversation with family members when you recognize that this is important. And this is for whether you're talking with a family member or a client about additional services. It's all about the approach and the intent. It's important to begin with asking others' goals and focus on their goals and their needs, which will limit their objections because they are their goals. And if these are the ways to manage those and to achieve them, then it is much more palpable to be able to accept those. Honest responses are key, even if they're not the easy ones. We don't want to share of something we can do if it's not realistic. And it's important to make sure that we're honest about what we can provide and what, as a family member, we can offer. Sometimes it's helpful when you're talking to family members to take it out of the personal. So if I, as a daughter, am talking to my mom who I feel needs some services, instead of saying, "Mom, I think you need," is to bring up the conversation by sharing a story, whether it is completely based on a true person or a compilation of individuals, to say, "Mom, I have a friend at work who just is dealing with her parents, and they have recently needed some more care and want to stay in their home and started to incorporate these home care services. You know, have you ever thought about that? What are your goals? And really take it out of the personal and bring it into some information you may have garnered from other places. Always consider someone's cognitive, memory, hearing, and vision concerns when you're starting that conversation. Make sure it's in an environment that they can easily hear you in, that if memory is a concern, that we're giving very short parts of the conversation. We're not asking them to have to kind of sit for too long to really try to comprehend all that's going. And if they're not going to remember time frames of when this is happening, then we don't need to be talking about time frames. We need to be talking about what will be occurring. Include the home care team, as they are experts at having these conversations. And often I have found for myself, when I have gone in to talk with families, that individual family members tend to be more open to at least socially being kind of allowing that person to have some time to talk about who they are and what they can provide without cutting them off. Where in a family environment, you're sometimes, because of all of the history and the emotion, not as willing to listen to each other. So having someone there as an outsider really can allow some good conversation to occur. It's important, once care has been set, is to really build a successful relationship with that care team. Establish trust. And that's why building and beginning a relationship with a home care team early is important, because you really get to know that care team before your needs increase, before there's a crisis, when now you are at your kind of height of stress and kind of emotions are at their kind of core. So really starting early allows everybody to kind of get to know each other on their best days, so that when things change, there's a recognition of that a change has occurred, and that we're still there to be able to provide that service, even if it's in an enhanced way. Being proactive. Waiting until a crisis occurs often limits your options. Waiting for that fall to happen, or saying that nothing's happened up to this point, but then a fall happens, which really could have much more detrimental consequences. Being proactive to, again, bring in services for short periods of time to just make it a safer environment. Build confidence in the services that people are providing. And so having and establishing that relationship early allows people to know, you know what, they really can meet the needs of my mom. Or I, as an individual, feel confident in the care team that we've put together, that they know how to handle my needs. They don't have to keep asking questions. Responsiveness of the care team is key. And really, how do you look at enhancing communication? We have what's called Family Connect for our caregivers to be able to document, and our care team document what's happening on a day-to-day basis when they're in the home, that family members from outside who aren't there on a day-to-day basis can really look at and see what things may be changing. Are there some needs? And just a nice way to communicate back and forth with each other. And if it's a bigger family unit with many siblings, then that communication is taken care of for you, so that one person doesn't have to feel like they're relaying every story. What kind of questions do you need to ask a home care provider before they're coming in to provide services? So it's important to understand what type of training and supervision and monitoring that staff receive from the office team. As I shared, it's important that if you or a parent has, for instance, Parkinson's, or a child has muscular dystrophy, that care team recognizes the unique nature, understands what that diagnosis is about, knows the symptoms that you deal with based off of that. And so that's really important. What supervision they're receiving. How often does someone come out and visit and make sure everything's going well? to have those conversations with family and client outside of the caregiver, so that people feel like they can have honest conversations about things that are going well and things that you would like to adjust. How is the plan of care developed? With whom is it discussed? It's important that all parties are incorporated into this. The client themselves, for however much they can participate, family members, other healthcare providers, so that everybody knows what their role is and there's no duplication of services or kind of stepping on each other. I talk about this, that it really is a dance. And I know that our care teams are good dance partners because they understand how everybody kind of fits in to the situation. What kind of backup is there on a 24-hour basis, and who do you contact, and how are questions responded to? How does an agency assure that staff show for the scheduled time? Are they using a telephony system, which is a way that individuals check in on a telephone, and if they're not there for a scheduled time and haven't shown for within a few minutes, then that is alerted back to the office team to know and to check what's happening. Is it that when they got to the home, there was so much activity going on, or assistance was needed right away to take that individual to the restroom, perhaps, that they didn't check in, but they're there and everything is good? Ensuring consistency of care providers is key. The whole point for family and for clients is to reduce the burden, to not have to continually retell your story. We have to share and show the home setting and how things are functioning. So really ensuring that the care team is put in place in such a way that it's consistent, that scheduling is done consistently, and that we know that incidents happen and caregivers get ill. Life happens to caregivers, as they do to all of us. And so who else on that team is aware of the situation? And again, ensuring that they also have that extra special training if there's something unique about the diagnosis that is necessary to understand. How is the agency screening their staff? The national background checks that are completed, the referrals that are being done, the time spent with caregivers to really know who they are and their personalities and their skill sets, beyond just how well they may be able to transfer a client, but back to the communication, back to kind of interpreting symptoms to know what to do before somebody has to ask. Understanding that if someone does not feel compatible with a caregiver, what happens then? How does it be addressed and make some adjustments to ensure that that care relationship is improved upon, or to look to see, is it that another caregiver is needed because we weren't even aware of some of the personality traits we really wanted. We wanted someone who is more talkative or less talkative, or had some different conversational skill levels in terms of talking about some things that we enjoy, particularly when we're talking about some younger clients, to make sure that there is a synergy between them so that everybody feels comfortable. How is caregivers introduced to ensure that there's a comfort level if you already know a team member and have met them several times? When that caregiver comes into the home for their first session, is that care team member coming along so that there's not this awkward kind of introduction period? Are caregivers employees, or are they contractors? And those who are employees, such as with SYNERGY HomeCare, that we ensure that there is no concerns or needs from a family or a client in terms of paying for taxes and ensuring that all of the liabilities and insurances are in place. But more than that, it's ensuring that, again, there is that supervision, there is the training that is going into play. How does the home care team work with other healthcare providers, which, as I shared, is so key? It really does need to be a dance. Everybody needs to be focused on the same goals, know which party takes care of which aspects, so that nothing goes undone, but as important, nothing is duplicated. And of course, how is information shared with others? And part of that goes to the client and how much information they want shared, and are there some legal decision makers in place, or particularly, for young adults who are able to manage your own care, what part of that service are they comfortable sharing with others in their care team? There are a lot of resources out there, but again, those who are needing care, those who are providing the family support, should not have to be burdened with having to do all of the research. So wanted to provide some tools for you. Our website has a section where it talks about all of the different types of services we can provide. And again, the unique skills that we bring to each one of those, whether it's cancer care, disability care, disease specific for Parkinson's, neuromuscular, ALS, for prenatal services or maternal health. So within the website, you can really get an understanding of how is this client situation looked at, and what is unique about the services that we're going to be putting in place. Look for Synergy HomeCare on YouTube, because each one of our monthly webinars is recorded and put onto our YouTube channel. And we have now been doing this for over close to 2 years now. So there are a multitude of videos on so many different topics, both family support related, direct care related, as well as general issues that face caregivers and what's happening in society as well. So many different ways to manage that. Looking at disease-specific associations is also a great resource to start with, particularly if it's a new diagnosis, to be able to download tools and booklets on different issues that are really specifically related. Talking with with a Synergy HomeCare office near you, they can also get you access to some of these booklets out of their resource library that they've set up for caregivers to be able to read about more of the different diagnoses across the life cycle, as well as for family support. There is a website called Family Caregiver Alliance, where for family caregivers, it's a great tool to be able to access resources and find support. Aging Life Care is a national association of care managers who really are long-term care concierges who help understand family and clients understand some of their needs and direct them and partner them with community resources that can be beneficial. On the website as well, you can download a free guide, Where Do We Begin? A guide for caregiving, which really talks about several of the things I've discussed, but it has assessment tools on there that are easy to use for non-professionals as well as professionals to help understand what options are available and give you a really detailed dictionary and glossary of terms that you may be hearing as you're going through this process. You contact us at Carla Sutter at synergyhomecare.com, and we'll be able to send that to you. If you would like to have this presentation or any one of our presentations offered to your local community group of colleagues or organization, please go on to our synergyhomecare.com website, find the local office near you, and talk with that owner and the team on how to coordinate that. Anyone has questions, please write them into the question box, and we will just take a moment to look at those and then be able to answer. If someone has a question that they would like more personal information back on, please don't hesitate, again, to use the Synergy website to find your local office and ask the expert in your community, or to contact us here and use the email carlasutter@synergyhomecare.com. So we're going to take just a moment to look at these questions and then be able to answer some of these.